thanks everyone for tuning in. If you don't know me, my name is Atish. I'm a DJ, producer, label guy based out of New York. I cut my teeth in San Francisco, which is where I first met my guest, Peter Blick. But if you're tuning in, this is part of my Office Hours series, which is part of my Patreon program. I'm opening up a few of these for free to the public at large. I'm just kind of feeling it out, seeing how this interview series goes, seeing how it resonates with people, and hopefully it's helpful. Yeah, if you're into what I'm doing, you're welcome to support me at patreon.com/AtishMusic. And enough about me. Today's guest is, as I mentioned, someone I met in San Francisco, someone I've been working with for at least a decade now. He does bookings, promotions, and production at Public Works in San Francisco. He's a promoter with the moniker Below Radar, doing events in San Francisco and events in Denver. He's the talent buyer at a new venue in Phoenix called Walter Warehouse. And I say this very frequently because it's very true. And I love him and I respect him dearly. He's just the best of the best in the industry. I've been working with Peter, as I said, for a long time, and I just love working with Peter. And there's a phrase a lot of us use in the industry, which is one of the good ones. And Peter is one of the good ones. So I always look
Thank you.
forward to working with him, interacting with him, and hanging out with him. So yeah, thanks for being here, Peter.
Cool. Thank you. That's very sweet and enjoy working with you as well.
Awesome. So yeah, before we get into it, just for a little more context beyond, what you're doing right now, what's your relationship with the world of, let's say, bookings and the world of dance music? How did it all begin for you and how did you get to this point here?
Uh, Really in the late 90s was just kind of getting into some bands and funk music and um, started DJing a little bit and, working with a band called the Gray Boy All Stars and then a few other, some local bands and just started promoting a bit, working with a few venues, moved to Sun Valley, Ketchum, Idaho, and was booking some cool music out there for many years and DJing, and then sort of been from Colorado to San Francisco, back to Colorado, and now here in Phoenix as of August and working with the Walter Productions team here. And it's been great.
Awesome. I'm actually playing Walter Warehouse this Saturday, so that's going to be a fun event, and it's a very, very cool venue. So let's just jump right into it. Let's get into the industry talk. Oh, and by the way, for anyone tuned in, you're welcome to shout out questions in the chat. I'll try to get to as many as I can, and I have a long list of questions here. So yeah, let's just power through. So let's just start with the big thing on my mind and many people's mind, which is COVID. How has this? I mean, how do you feel? What's the status quo in the nightlife world in relation to COVID? How has it changed, and how do clubs and promoters and bookers kind of look forward in a post-COVID world, whenever that may be?
Yeah, it's really had its ups and downs. It's like last July, it seemed like things were just opening up and people were ready to go out, and then the next wave came in and and then protocols came back, and attendance numbers have been hit or miss. And it's also, I mean, I see it with the DJs and I see it as a promoter myself, the feeling of like, is it really right to be putting something out there right now? And it's been rather strange. I'm feeling like we're in a much better place as of the last couple of months. Um, Looking to the future, I guess you keep it in mind, but stay positive and just hope that we're not going into any more of these waves. And if so, if the cases are on the mild side, then we're hoping it's a bit more like a cold in that sense. But yeah, it's been quite the struggle.
Definitely. And I know I've definitely been a pain in your ass. I've been on the very conservative side, COVID travel wise, having a newborn at home, and just it's been so hard for me, and I'm guessing for many other DJs, just to commit dates or to say, are the numbers up or the numbers down? Let's put a clause in our contract saying, the artist can back out at any minute. I'm sure there's all these new logistical headaches that I apologize for. But
No, there's even on, like, making offers, there's a checklist of protocols, and you're dealing with deposit situations, and um, it's a pretty weird one to navigate. And it's like you have big guarantees, say the end of December, you have some pretty big parties, and you move on and do the party, but no one wants to come out because everyone's scared. And you're like, something that should have made a lot of money didn't. It really puts you in a weird position. um, yeah, it's I think the sensitivity factors really stayed in the mix for a lot of people. And there's also some people just move on and say, all right, well, it was what it is, or it is what it is, and not worried about what happened on the last gig. And yeah, it's definitely a tricky one.
sure. Um, this is one thing I've observed, and I don't know if it's just me and my audience or I'm being booked, but have you noticed a change in the energy or vibes in dance floors in a in middle of the pandemic, and as we kind of emerge out a little bit? Has the culture changed and the feeling changed?
It's kind of difficult for me to gauge. Walter Warehouse is a rather large space and has all the art cars around it, and we can kind of move the cars in and out according to how many people we're expecting. And we've sort of given people a little more space based on their comfort level. And I haven't been into that many packed rooms
Mhm.
to, uh, you know, it's like people's commitment to going out. They're like, all right, I really, really want to see this artist, but I know it's going to be packed. And it's like, all right, they're sort of taking that risk with going out, or, wanting to be in the middle of the room versus kind of on the outskirts.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's kind of tough for me to gauge the energy level, but what have you experienced with that?
This last string of gigs I've had these last few weekends, and again, I don't know if it's just my filtered view or the cities I've been playing or whatever, but I've found I've been struggling with the crowds quite a bit, and I feel like there's been two contingencies, which is one, like half the crowd is like the Atish fans or like the house heads or the people who follow the music, and then the other half is like clubbers, like people who are just like going out to like just get messed up and just like go for the guys who are at like the front of the DJ booth going like pump it up, like the worst people on the dance floor.
Oh, yeah.
And I've just been struggling. I've been trying to like thread that needle, to like try and get somewhere in between. And for me, it's actually just been really tough because either like it's hard to thread it or like to please everyone, or I'll go like on the deep side for like the fans, and I'll like drive it in there, and then like no one's happy, like half the dance floor is unhappy at any given time. So either that's just a reflection of how the crowds have changed, but it could also just be me, like maybe I'm just rusty because my skill of reading dance floors has changed. I actually I was genuinely asking you because I'm curious, because like yeah, it's something that I'm just kind of trying to sort through myself right now, and also philosophically think about how I want to play. Like maybe I'm just not going to try and be that DJ who pleases everyone on the dance floor. I'm just going to do what I do. But anyway, I'm rambling. Enough about me. Um, um, so a lot of people tune in here. I'm guessing most people tune in here are up and coming producers or DJs, or trying to get a deeper understanding, about how the industry works and how to break through. What are club bookers and talent buyers looking for when they're booking acts?
um right now it's basically seeing what's going to make sense, for the club. And if it's going to do well financially, if we're really passionate about the music. It's really the same as it's ever been, and sort of differentiating yourself from what others are doing. Um, I'm definitely seeing this rise of big headliners that have just kind of blown up out of nowhere, and people packing these clubs for the next, the hot thing at the moment. And then I see the underground in the clubs at least kind of struggling.
Hmm. It's I had Gunita a couple months ago, my booking agent and also promoter, and it feels like it's one of these things where just like this like the rich get richer, like the DJs who are big, or on track to be really big, they're doing really really well, and then the poor get poorer, and there's not as much of a middle class, let's say, in the world of bookings as there was pre-COVID, let's say. Um, Now, let's just say, leaving COVID or pre-COVID aside, if you're if someone is a DJ and they're looking to break through, let's say they've never played a club gig, or they have, a gig, every few months or whatever, small parties. How does the club, sorry, I'm sorry, how does the DJ get the attention of the club? Like, what are those characteristics that a club or promoter wants to say, hey, yeah, I'm going to give you a shot for your first gig, or hey, this is this crosses the threshold for making it to the next level.
um I think it's basically putting out some really good mixes. It's staying active with media and social media, showing that you actually care. um chain you know it's differentiating yourself from what everyone else is doing. And um from a business standpoint, it's always good to see that you're promoting yourself and bringing uh, some numbers in, but also just coming in and playing a rockin' set or whatever it might be. If you're playing mid tempo and people are loving it. And um, yeah, kind of really just engaging the crowd and bringing the right people out.
So more tactically, let's say I'm bedroom producer X. Do I just do my thing and wait for Peter Blick to reach out to me? Or should I, be in the clubs every weekend, like hope to run into you or have a warm introduction? Or should I just cold email you? Like, how does that actual connection happen?
Okay, so we're talking about more like local up and coming
Yeah,
DJs.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Like people who are just trying to get their first club gig, or at least get some level of traction in their local scene to start.
Yeah, I think it's playing smaller places and um, being out and supporting some of the nights. And I think being active with making mixes and yeah, coming up and saying hello. And that certainly helps. But it's also, it can be a little overwhelming on my side with emails and texts and um, kind of having a little bit of a screening device because there's only so many hours in the day and I can't check every single mix. But um, yeah, going out and supporting and showing like I'm really into this music. And I think the most important thing really is like if you're making mixes to show that you can play that opening slot and leave the headliner in a good place, make sure that they feel happy with it and that the crowd has not just had, they haven't just been banged out and the headliners like, now where do I go from here? I know you've dealt with that a lot in your life.
Yeah, I have a whole sub question about that, which is, I mean, let's just get into that. I have more follow-up questions on the previous one, but I feel something has changed in the last few years where it seems like openers just don't give a fuck anymore. Like, it feels like it's an art that's just like just lost, or it doesn't matter, or like, or maybe the bookers have changed their perspective, which is like, fine, just get the party rocking early, people will buy drinks, like, go to town. Is this just me and like my unique perspective, or is this something that's changed in the way people are booked, or just what the expectations are out of an opener?
my philosophy is making the whole night progress how it should. I think there's some promoters out there that are only seeing the profit and like, okay, the ex DJ can bring 150 people. Let's book him, even though the headliner is not going to be happy when he gets on to play.
Just let him do what he wants. Who cares?
Yeah, that's always been strange to me, and I think, you know, there's certain times of the night where it's like, all right, if the headliner's actually getting on at 1 a.m. or something like that, yeah, you want to be grooving. You don't want people to roll in and stand around and feel like it's a boring party. But and you could take the energy level up there, but you definitely have to bring it down a couple notches before that headliner goes on. I've always been very sensitive to that as a promoter and as a DJ. And it's not that easy to find those DJs. And again, I feel like sending those mixes in and showing that, like, hey, you can kind of stay in that pocket and leave people at 112, 115, 118. That's really important.
Absolutely. And, going back to the previous question, which is how does one get that opening, or get those gigs early on? It might be stating the obvious, and I'm repeating what you're saying, but if you're going to cold email, a promoter or a booker, or if you're going to even ask for a warm introduction and you want to showcase what your sound is, a booker is probably not going to give you the 1 or 2 a.m. Headline slot for your first gig. So definitely think about, showing the promoter what you're probably going to play. And at even more broadly, even though SoundCloud is a platform that's on the decline and Spotify is up, but if you're not producing a lot of music, it's really, really important to put out mixes regularly. When I broke through, I was doing a mix every month, and that box was kind of strongly checked, which is, that's probably part of what gave you confidence, because you had a strong, clear feeling of probably what I was going to sound like. And then, the other box I was checking, I was going out, every weekend and, seeing and talking to people. And I mean, also helping out in the scene, just participate in the scene, show people what you can actually do, before you do it, because that's what they want to see, and just prove that you care, and
Yeah.
put the work into it for sure. Sound like Kim Kardashian.
I remember the days of Atish opening a lot of parties at Public Works, and then I remember the days of doing, big headliner parties in the main room and having you host the Loft. And I think maybe a Macioplex was in the main room, and then you guys held it down in the Loft and had that room just as full, and I was like, oh wow, we're really getting somewhere now.
Yeah,
And
I
then
mean,
rest into the main room.
yeah, I mean, yeah, to that point, I think you answered a question before I even asked, which is how does one progress and grow within the city? And I think that's one use case of how it happens, which is you just start small, you build a relationship with the promoter over time, and they have more and more trust in you, and then more and more opportunities open up, and they do parties in other places or in other rooms. And it's not something that happens overnight. I mean, from the first time you booked me to when I was playing the main room, I mean, it took a few years for sure. But
Yeah, and another important part of that is like, okay, you can show that you play that opening slot and give the headline DJ some love, bring some people out, and then you show that you can hold it down as the headliner in the smaller room or just a smaller club, and fill that in. It's a really nice vibe there. But even more importantly, once you get to the next level, is like, can you play a 4 or 5 hour set and keep people engaged and kind of go all over the place with it without getting boring? And I think that's part of what the Atish all night is. And with we're opening a new space here in Phoenix, and it's going to have a couple smaller rooms. I think that's going to be important for people to come in on a Sunday and just not even have a cover, but just play really cool music. And you can even play some rock and roll and some dub, and just like, you're having brunch and hanging out, or it turns into an afternoon dance party, just kind of being eclectic and showing that you have range.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very excited about that small room in Phoenix. I definitely want to play that when it's ready to go. Um, so we have a lot of, as I said, DJs and up and coming producers here. I also had a few questions from people that messaged me in advance saying, how does one break through as a promoter? And this is actually very much related to being a DJ. In a lot of my mentorship sessions and when I kind of coach others or give advice, they're saying, how do I get these gigs? How do I break through? How do I do this? Part of it is everything Peter said, but one really great way to do that is to throw your own parties. If someone's not booking you, control your destiny and like make your own shit happen. So, okay, I'm a DJ. Now I guess I'm going to try this promotion thing. What is a talent buyer? What is a club looking for in a promoter? To give them their first shot. And what does a promoter need to do to promote an event?
Yeah, again, it's starting small and bringing the right crowd and making sure that you're filling the space, being really easy to work with, but also business minded. And you're like, okay, is the club making money? Am I making money? I know we're all just building this, but like seeing the long-term trajectory of it. And it's like, one thing is to bring in a different and diverse crowd, which is really important. It's like, all right, is it the same tech house people that are going out everywhere? It could be kind of boring. um, it's the quality and the quantity of people that they're bringing in, the style of music, of course the financial element. We all need our nights to be successful, um, but in the long term, we're basically looking at growth. And if we see that it's a nice crowd, the music's good, and it's staying accessible to the right people, then it feels like it's worth the relationship and keeping building that.
Sure. And also, similar to a DJ wanting their first booking at a club, just kind of backpedaling a second. And if I want to do my first event, let's just say at Public Works, let's say I cold email you or whatever, how does that can I just email you and say, hey, I want to do an event, and you're like, cool, or
I'm gonna tell you that you're gonna get booked in the coat check by 4 p.m. on a Monday, and then we'll start with that and see if you can fill the 8-person coat check. See how if you're still smiling at the end of it. Uh, um, yeah, it depends on the room size and being realistic. And obviously filling like Thursdays and Sundays, these are the dates where you can go in and you're going to have less of a rental, less of a bar guarantee. It's also, you can get some of these crowds out that don't want to go out and deal with the debaggery weekend crowd, and get a more, just a more cultured crowd that actually wants to hang out together and make it feel intimate.
Totally. Yeah. There was a great party in LA, which was Monday Night Social. It still might be happening, but like Monday night, that's when the right people came out. Like the definitely not the weekend debaggery crowd. And yeah, the off nights are often have a much more enjoyable crowd, and like you said, it creates opportunities. Um, the one thing I wanted to add is similar to being a DJ who wants to break through. We were talking about participate in the scene. I think that goes even stronger here if you want to be a promoter and you want to, start doing events. You need to be a part of the scene, especially if the talent buyer, I don't want to put words in your mouth, correct me if I'm wrong, but you want to know that it's someone who's going out, talking to people, who knows people, who's showing face, doing this kind of thing. There's a lot more of that. I think the participation variable is much stronger for someone wanting to come in and say I'm doing an event. Because if you're a hermit at home all the time, what kind of faith does a club booker have that you know enough people to bring him out?
Yeah, it's super important, and there's a lot of amazing bedroom producers and DJs. And maybe it just doesn't feel right to be going out, and they do want to perform. And yeah, it's a tricky one. And I think the Zoom and the Twitch world and some of that stuff has kind of opened things up with that. I really paid very little attention to that and decided to that the industry's closed and just go camping pretty much all of summer. And I'd come back and have like 2 new emails after 10 days, be like, oh, hitting the road again. Yeah, the streaming thing, I don't know, is that still even is that still really even happening?
I don't know actually. I mean, if anyone in the chat wants to chime in, I mean, it's definitely, as far as I know, not as big as it was in the heyday. Now the only streaming I do is just kind of interviews or demo reviews. But yeah, I actually I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's probably rocket shipped a few DJs I can think of, which is like they maybe weren't on people's radar that much, pre-streaming wave, and then now a lot more is happening. But I don't, because of what they did when they were streaming. But I can't really say.
Yeah.
Lots of open format is still doing well. There you go. So yeah. Um, all right, so moving on. So, this is one thing that I talk about and Gunita, talked about a couple months ago, which is promoters, booking agents, I mean, managers, talent buyers. They're looking for the full package in an artist. And I think a lot of people have different definitions of what the full package is. And you touched on that a little bit, but um, what is a full package artist? What are all the things that what are the boxes to check that catch your eye, saying like, oh yeah, this artist is worth paying attention to?
First and foremost is the music.
Mhm.
um I like social media numbers. I check it out, but the first thing like is going through the original productions or the mixes, and then it's kind of like, all right, then it's like there's the social media side. You could check Instagram, Spotify, Facebook, SoundCloud. um, that's kind of, I guess, the four. What the streaming, you could check the stats there, and sometimes I'm like 300 million streams by someone I've never heard of, but I don't use Spotify.
Mhm.
But if you look at all those numbers and see how engaged people are with the artist, but at the end of the day, it's like the quality of the music versus like the business side of it, and finding that balance. Then when you have some history with the artists and the agency, it's a matter of like, are they personable? Are they someone you want to have back? I've had plenty of DJs that were very successful and it just left me with a bad taste. And I'm like, I'll probably book them again, but I don't know that I'm not going to really pursue it that hard.
Mhm.
Yeah, being easy to work with, showing that they're actually willing to promote on their side. Fees are obviously important, and a lot of that, a lot of the strategy, sometimes it works, but a lot of the strategies like lower fee with bonuses right now, and some people are willing to go with that. It really like kind of it obviously lowers the risk and incentivizes the artist to promote it. And on the flip side, the agency and the artist can say, well, how do we know you're actually going to do your job and promote this well? I totally get that. So it's there's a number of different things, but at the end of the day, it's the quality of the music and if you can actually turn out a crowd.
How I'm genuinely curious. I mean, how important, let's just start with like one number. Let's just say like Instagram followers. How important is that number? And especially taking, well, I'll just, before I reveal more, I mean, how important is that number, for instance?
I think that's kind of the last thing that I check,
Mhm.
but it's important if the music really like speaks to you. And this is, there's plenty of acts where I'm like, wow, no one, like, you look at a Facebook page and they have like 847 followers or something, and then you're like, all right, well, that's definitely not going to bring in any numbers. And then you're like, um, you look at these gigs that they're playing and all of a sudden they're just blowing up, and you're like, wow, I guess people have left Facebook, and some of them are really not that, like, not paying attention to social media. You look at a lot of the Romanian DJs, and um, there's quite a few acts that you just have to go into it knowing that you're not going to get any promotion on their side, but they are going to be some of the best performers that you'll ever book.
The Romanian scene is interesting because, yeah, you're not, I mean, I think you probably won't get promotion. They might not even have massive, social media numbers, or they might not even participate in social media. But like, I'll go on YouTube and their tracks will have like hundreds of thousands of listens. And there's this like subset of people who are really into, Romanian, this Romanimal, movement, and they're coming out and they're hardcore fans and they're really, really into the music, but they're just kind of, that whole scene is, I think, playing a different game than the rest of it when it comes to numbers and, like, the classic boxes that need to be checked, compared to like a
Sure.
house DJ or a tech house DJ. It's very interesting to me.
Yeah. And even like some of the giggling guys, you're like zero on that side.
Mhm.
And you go to some of these festivals in Europe and it's just like they go on sale and everyone wants to be there. And it's like they're just kind of doing it their own way. And it's really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So you touched on this one, which is fees, which is, how do you decide what's a fair fee to pay an artist? And let's answer this from two perspectives. One, which is more catered to the audience who's tuned in for, let's say, DJs who are kind of just breaking through, and then two, just more broadly in the industry for regular out of town acts that you're booking. How do you calibrate what's a fair fee?
Usually start with a pitcher of beer and a small pizza and then go from there. Um, I don't know. So we're talking about local DJs
Let's start there. Yeah, yeah,
or kind of regional.
yeah.
I think in general, if it's someone that you're wanting to book, it's got to be in that like 150 to 250, 300 range. And um, it's the experience, it's how much they want it, how much you see that they're pushing some other events that they're playing. Um, and I actually like it when people are like, oh, actually, I won't play for that. I'm like, all right, I'm glad you're stepping up and saying that. It shows that you're valuing your craft.
Hmm.
But yeah, in general, it's anywhere from 150 to on the lowest end, and I would say 1,000 on the higher end. Just it depends how often you're playing out. I think that was also another one of the questions. It's like if I'm a booker and put you in a really good slot on a Friday, and then I see that you book to play for someone else on the Saturday, I don't feel that great about it. Sometimes it is hard to say no to one gig or another, but at the end of the day, I think like, you know, playing playing a couple times a month, maybe three, makes the most sense unless you're doing like, a residency with 50 people that's a little bit out of town that just kind of has its own crowd. But if you're playing the clubs and something where we're expecting you to bring in a few people and play the right music, then, you know, I definitely pay attention if you're booking yourself the next night with a headliner in a competing club or something.
I mean, even worse. I mean, sometimes locals will take two gigs in the same night, play the opening slot. One place and be like, "Yo, I gotta bounce and play another slot, another club." Uh,
Yeah,
I
some
I I did that once, and I'm very very embarrassed that I did that, but I never did that again.
yeah, I mean, it's showing up and playing in after parties okay every now
Yeah,
and then.
yeah, yeah,
What once people come to expect that, it's not okay.
yeah, yeah. That is true. The context is different too. If it's an after hours in someone's this thing, or if it's a 10 p.m. slot than like a 7 a.m. slot, those are two different things for sure.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So you actually just answered my next question. So and another thing that you touched on, which is a resident DJ. Um, I feel like I kind of came up as a DJ when the idea of like a club resident was kind of fading. Just what are your thoughts around like a DJ resident or a club resident? Is that something that, you know, you or clubs are still interested in, or is this kind of something that's of old, yesteryear? Kind of what's going on with that world of resident DJs?
Um, that's a somewhat of a sensitive subject, I would say. I've been very I don't know. It's a tough one because it's like, all right, there's residents that you want to be regular DJs for you and represent, and you're going to put them on all the time, but you also want to have a selection of a few different DJs and bring a lot of different people in, and there's a lot of just general sensitivity to it and feelings. Um, so I think I'm not seeing many like residents these days. Um, Rachel Toro was one, I think, was someone that you kind of worked with early on and helped us out with Public Works. And I'm like, Rachel's just an amazing human and such a wonderful DJ. So we had her listed as a Public Works resident for years and always did the best job. Um, Ramona Wouters, who is opening for you here on Saturday, she's pretty much the below radar resident. When she comes to the States, I'll try to find her gigs and play parties in San Francisco, here in Phoenix, and a lot in Denver. She has a lot of roots there as well. So it's other than that, it's really a tough one with the clubs, and I'm a little bit detached from a few things right now, as far as like not living in San Francisco, not living in Denver, being new in Phoenix, um, and just in general, it's like, where has the resident gone? I don't hear much about resident DJs anymore.
My theory is this, and I don't know if this is, close to the truth at all, but I think in the last 10 to 15 years, um, underground, for lack of a better word, this style of music is an order of magnitude more popular than it was 10 or 15 years ago. Which means it's also, and there's so many, I mean, San Francisco alone, there's so many more clubs, where you can hear this kind of thing compared to when I moved there in 2006 or 2007, or at least more clubs that I'm aware of. Um, so I think it's gotten so I think the clubs are very competitive with each other to bring people. So, now, when everyone went to the end up, that fourth Saturday, of the month, now every single club is competing every single weekend night. So I think my theory is that it puts a little bit more pressure on the club to keep it fresh and to keep new faces coming through and to keep new crowds coming through, because the resident, I mean, you can have hardcore fans of a resident, but you'll probably pull higher numbers. You touch on this, keeping it fresh and bringing new faces in and bringing new crowds. So that's my long-winded theory. I think it's just the competitiveness of the scene makes it hard to kind of have the same person playing, twice a
Yeah,
weekend.
Yeah, I had another thought on that and I just lost it for a second. Keep going for just a second.
Yeah, but I think the I mean there are other ways to have residencies. I think for me, I was never a official club resident anywhere, but I was doing a monthly Tutu Tuesday party. Carla Tutu was the promoter, and I had a guaranteed gig, once a month as the resident of that party. And I think that's probably, that's kind of what Ramona is, for you, as you said. I think that's the closest thing. And that experience I had having a regular gig every month, for roughly the same crowd, um, really was instrumental in me developing my DJ chops,
Mm,
having a presence, building relationships with all the headliners that were coming in, and just that level of having regularity of a gig was really, really huge. So I think that's what residency has shifted to. Now, obviously, it's not just easy to say, oh yeah, just go become the resident of a party. But this does go into, this my three words, control your destiny kind of thing, which is either become a promoter, and if you're not good at that or you don't want to do it, find someone who you can partner with who has a lot of friends, who has a network, who has a business mindset, and start something new. And both of you, focus on your strengths and start your own residency with your own party. Maybe do something once a month, maybe it's even once a quarter, but some level of regularity with a crowd that you're building a relationship with is extremely powerful and extremely important.
yeah. And that's what I was thinking was like, okay, you have this whole residency side of things. Um, and then becomes things can be a little bit territorial when say another club is like, oh, I want to book your resident. And I mean, I can be territorial. There's a lot of artists that I've worked with for 10 years that have been really loyal, and it's quite amazing because back in the day you'd lose money on them and they'll stay at your house when they come through town. Um, so it's the territorial and the residency thing, and exclusivity. There's kind of this interesting balance with that, and I try to think of it on both sides because it's like, hey, you play for X promoter in this town um, pretty regularly. Every now and then, I think it is good for you to go play for this other promoter in, whether it's across town, and maybe you're playing for a new crowd and you get 200 new people that come back to your gig.
Totally.
So that's it's an interesting balance, and it's like it's good to expand, but it's also like there's a lot of feelings involved with that.
For sure. 100%. And, I'll just take this chance to butter your ass a little bit. I mean, you and I, we've had a very close, relationship working together. Public Works was where I played the most, and playing for you in Denver a bunch. But I've always appreciated that, artists have their own interests too, where, they sometimes need to go off the ranch a little bit and do other things. And I've always appreciated how you were supportive and understanding of that, and seeing the big picture. And from my end, I've always tried to always put Peter first, always, ask for, permission rather than forgiveness, or, but this is, something for, other DJs who are playing for other promoters. These kind of sensitive topics, playing for other people and having an established relationship, someone who believed in you early on, it's important to, take that extra step. And I hope I've done a good job of this to, over communicate, or just say like, hey, just letting you know, like, I'm going to do this one thing here, still want to play for you, just making sure you're cool with it kind of thing. And that goes a long way, rather than kind of being like blindsided and like, hey, like, where did this come from? Like, what happened here? I thought we were friends, kind of thing.
Yeah, totally. And that communication is super key, and like respect all the way around. So yeah, appreciate that.
So we have about 10 minutes left. I have some more questions, but just want to take an opportunity, if anyone who's tuned in wants to throw out some questions, I can set aside this last 10 minutes for that. Otherwise I'll just kind of continue going through some of the topics I have in mind. Um, oh no. I have 70 tabs open with all my questions, and I actually clicked one of the other tabs. All right, so
That sounds
uh
like my brain every day. Like 70 tabs open.
All right. Brian has a question. I can't find your video. Brian, you can unmute yourself if you want to ask your
Cool.
question, or you can send it over text.
Cool. Thanks. So I'm kind of one of those naive Luddite bedroom producers who like doesn't want to play the game. And it's been hammered into me that you need to hustle, you need to promote yourself and do all those things. But I'm wondering if you are an artist who chooses to pursue a path of putting out music and having the career performing follow, how much does industry cachet in terms of like labels matter? Like, let's say I don't play gigs and nobody knows about me, but I just signed a track with, like Adam Bayer or something. I don't know. Is that kind of similar to playing a big gig in terms of what you look at? Obviously, if the chops are there for mixing.
Yeah, I don't pay that much attention to brands myself as far as like if the production is good and there's a fair amount that are consistent, that certainly helps. At the end of the day, like it's the being able to put the flow of a mix together. I think that is more important than the actual brand or specific person, where it's like, all right, just getting out there and just kind of building.
Cool. I'll add one more thing, which is a narrow case, but if you're a hardcore producer, if you have a live set, it's really, really valuable just to have a video of you performing your live set. I've been pushing this with a couple of my mentees, because you can send that to a promoter. They see what your setup looks like. They see how how interesting it is to watch. They see how the flow of everything is. That goes a long way, if you're doing a live set. And actually, that goes for a DJ set too. If you're not playing a bunch of gigs, if you're not doing the hustle and doing the game, at least just put something out there that gives an idea of what your presence looks like, and this kind of thing. Video is very, very powerful.
Yeah, I've seen that, and it's helped a lot as well. Like someone will send me a video of something pretty creative, and that's just not the same old thing that you're getting.
Yeah. Video is king these days. Cool. Thanks for the question. Oh, hey, Layla. Didn't see that you were here. Her question is,
Mark is here too.
Oh, awesome. I'm coming up to Toronto next month. Hope to see you guys out there. Her question, or their question, is any advice on getting more SoundCloud plays and followers?
Yeah, I would say making sure that either your friend or the promoter is posting to Facebook pages, and if you're proud of it, share it with your friends. Play it out for them. Yeah, that's kind of the key, is just to let it happen organically, but at the same time, like posting to Facebook event pages. Sometimes like what we're doing here is like, if you have an emailer, it's always great to feature a new mix or the most current thing in an emailer. I asked Atish for one yesterday, and he sent one along, and I think our emailer is going to come out tomorrow, and that's actually like, it really it's promotional for the artist, and it's helpful for the audience. Maybe they just want to come to the venue because they heard it's a cool venue, and then they hear the mix and they're like, okay, this is awesome. I think that's kind of the angle with it.
There's a really good thing that you mentioned here, which I want to take a second, which is, okay, video is king. Actually, if video is email is the most underappreciated medium, I think, when it comes to promotion. If you don't have an email list now and you're trying to hustle and you're trying to gig, get a MailChimp, start a Google contact list, start an email list as soon as you can. That's been one of my more effective, I think, than Instagram, Facebook, that. Email is a very, very powerful communication channel. So I strongly, strongly recommend doing this. A couple things I want to add to getting more SoundCloud plays and followers. Everything, yes, to what Peter said. Beyond that, partnerships are really, really great. Or maybe partnerships isn't the right word, but doing guest mixes. So let's say for like Electronic Groove or for, Music is for Lovers or whoever. This is such a great way to reach another another brand's audience. For me, that's also been really, really instrumental for me in seeing when I look at my graph of followers, I'll see step functions early in my career. After I do a guest mix, I go from 300 followers to 400 followers. That's a huge jump right there. So, one, try and get landed on other platforms if you can, and two, regularity is important. Don't put out crap. Definitely keep a high quality bar. But like I said, when I started out, I was very disciplined about releasing a studio mix every month. And that builds a consistent, loyal following where people can have an intimate relationship with you as an artist. They feel like they know you and they want to tell their friends about you. So regularity with a high quality bar and partnering with other platforms is a great way to kind of and email, three great ways to have good engagement and to grow. And emails are also easily forwardable. If you send an email to someone, has a mix in it, someone just forwards that email to someone else, and there's good distribution there.
Yeah, but you also don't want to release all of your jams on that mix. You want to save some for when you're actually playing live.
That is true. I agree with you to I fundamentally agree with you to an extent. My philosophy has changed on that over the years, actually, which is I used to have a clear division between what I put in my mixes and what I do live because I don't want people to hear stuff they've heard in my mixes before ever. And okay, so the really special jams I save, but I've actually my opinion has changed over the years, which is I have a lot more comfortability playing music at gigs that are in my mixes because what I thought was a drawback is actually a positive because people are like, "Oh, I have this relationship with Atish. I know that jam from his mix. I have like a dopamine shot, hearing that track in a live setting and I have this, intimate relationship and it's that much more special." So, definitely the bombs I keep out of the mixes, but more broadly, it's a nice way to build an implicit relationship with your audience when they hear. I mean, even for DJs that when I see them play out and I heard one of their sets, I love it when I hear it. I'm like, oh, I remember this from his July mix like last year. Cool. So
yeah, that and 99% of the people cannot even come to see you.
Yeah.
So it's that balance of like the certain tunes where like, okay, you can save a few of those at least. But yeah, I hear you on that.
Totally. Yeah. There's a middle ground for sure. All right. No more questions in here. So I'll just close with my last one. So one of the most asked questions for me, to me, from up and coming artists is, do I need a booking agent? How important is it that I have an agent? And we had a whole call about this a couple months ago. From a talent buyer's perspective and promoter's perspective, how much does it matter to you if an artist is represented by an agent or not?
It's kind of tough to say. It helps when they're organized and helps when they're able to come up with a contract and an invoice and you have there's something there for organization's sake. But early on, like there's plenty of those sort of $500 to $1,500 DJs that you absolutely love and you have this connection with. Maybe they're from Berlin or wherever, and you're like, oh, if you come to the States, I would love to book you. And it's like they're not there to make money. The money pressure isn't really the focus. It's getting out and playing, and you have the trust that like, okay, this is someone I really want to build. I'm not even worried about losing money on this artist because the music's so good that I know the next time I'll have that relationship with the artist, and they probably will have an agent. And yes, we probably should do a contract, but sometimes it's like, it's really more important than dealing with an agent, and an agent telling you that the artist is worth $4,000 when the reality is like you're trying to build the artist.
Totally. And I won't name names, but I think you mentioned, we talked about this a few years ago. There was one agent who sometimes the agent can hurt the artist so much that you just will never book that artist because they work with the agent. I won't say who. But yeah, it can go both ways. So if you're going to sign with an agency, try and sign with someone who conducts business professionally, or they can do more damage than good.
Yeah.
But cool. All right. Well, we're at an hour now. I know you have a ton of stuff going on right now, Peter, so I don't want to hold you any longer, but really appreciate your time, sharing your knowledge and experience with everyone. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for the invite, Atish. Looking forward to seeing you here on Saturday, and yeah, we'll catch up here in a little bit. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Awesome. And yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. As I mentioned, this is a freebie, which is part of my Patreon program. If you want to support what I'm doing and have more access to stuff like this, you can support at patreon.com/AtishMusic. You can also join my Discord channel. You can go to atishmusic.com/Discord, and we have more industry talk and music talk and geeky tech talk there too. So, all right, everyone, have a nice evening and catch you all later. Bye.
Thanks all.